Good day, economics students. So this is the continuation of our discussion of gross domestic product. Now, if you'll look at page 447, they actually have in the clear it up box there a description of how in the world they manage to figure out gross domestic product. It really is astonishing that anybody can make sense of this enormous amount going on in the economy. But they point out there the Bureau of Economic Analysis is largely responsible for this. And they go through, and I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but take a look at that and they'll tell you how it is they build on the basic building blocks of the every 10-year census, the decennial census that's taken. We just had online, you could fill in your census. Hopefully one of your parents has already done that for your household. But every 10 years, in the years that end in zero, like this one, we fill out this big census of hopefully counting everybody in the United States and finding out some things about them. But they also find out about the economy by cherry picking randomly people around the country and businesses around the country during the census. But then in the intervening years, and the thing goes, the box there goes through and tells you how they, all the different surveys and the vast army of statisticians and economists and sociologists who pore over data from every sector of our economy and then revise. So if you're ever watching CNBC, for example, the economics reporter will say, third quarter GDP figures are out, but they'll probably say estimates first and then revised estimates. And every few months, they go back and fix the figures that they first released. So anytime you hear breaking economic news, remember there will be revisions. And sometimes, politicians will be crowing about the initial estimates, and then months later, after everybody's no longer paying attention, the estimates will be revised in a way they wouldn't approve of. But people never remember that. They always take the initial estimates as if they're gospel. But the economists, the statisticians, they do their job carefully, and the estimates are just estimates. There will be more data coming out, revising those estimates, and it's usually a full year before we get our final figures. This is such an enormous undertaking. It is so difficult to manage. So you can read that clear it up box there, and it will march you through the mountains of material and how it's processed. Very interesting. All right. The bottom of 448 goes through talking about trade balances. We talked about if we exported more than we import, we'd have a trade surplus. That would add to GDP. When, as for the last 40 years we import more than we export, we have a trade deficit, which actually reduces our gross domestic product. Well, we talked last time about measuring GDP by quantity demanded, aggregate quantity demanded. Who is demanding final goods and services? You can also measure GDP, and the figures will precisely match up in their totals if you measure production, if you measure supply, aggregate supply. Total aggregate supply should exactly equal total aggregate demand, right? So you look at what it is American manufacturers and suppliers of services put on the market and sell in a given year. So turn to 449. And there you'll see the figures for 2016, which add up again exactly to $18.6 trillion, just like the demand figures did. And we'll see where these things came from. And you'll see, first off, the two categories of goods broken down. There are durable goods. These are long-lasting things like automobiles, refrigerators, stoves, pieces of equipment that are expected to last the long haul, usually things that have a useful life exceeding 5 years. Those are durable goods. Non-durable goods are things that don't have an expected usable life that's terribly long. Your clothes. Now, I do have some shirts that are more than 10 years old that I do still wear, but they usually consider clothes and other things like that to be non-durable. Most people are going to replace, socks within 5 years. So they're non-durable goods. So you can break them down into durable and non-durable goods. And you'll notice as a share of economy, durable goods do have a bigger share than non-durable goods. Now, that might slightly surprise you, but remember we're looking at the monetary value of those things. And durable goods, they don't sell as many of them, obviously, but it's because they cost a whole lot more. Cars cost a lot more than socks. So you'd have to sell a whole lot of socks to be the equivalent of one pickup truck, right? Brand new pickup truck. So in terms of the total amount of economy measured in dollars, durable goods somewhat outpace non-durable goods. Services. These are things people do that don't have either non-durable or durable goods attached to them. So my teaching you, counter worker in the Whataburger, we talked about that. But the millions of other jobs people do, those are services. So unless if you're being paid for doing a job, you're being paid for a service, right? Most Americans earn their living in services. And that is why, when you look at the percentage of the economy, 62.4%. So that again is in the same ballpark as the percentage of the consumer purchasing drove the demand side. Here we see the supply side of the economy. It's mostly work we get paid for doing. So that is going to be services. Now, once upon a time, America was a major manufacturing country. And in those days, a much bigger share of our economy would have been durable goods and non-durable goods. But America is today primarily a service-oriented economy. It's what we do for each other that pays the bills, not what we make and sell on the market that pays the bills for the vast majority of us. Okay? Structures, these would be houses, buildings, anything that is built brand new. Now that does, remember, these are final goods and services. The equivalent of intermediate goods on the supply, on the demand side, is going to be used goods on the supply side. So if you sell your used clothes, they don't count as part of the GDP. If you sell a used car, that doesn't count as part of the GDP. Only new car sales would. If you sell a house that is not a brand new house, then it doesn't count as part of GDP. Now, structures, 8.1%, that's a decent chunk of the economy. And in fact, most economists pay very close attention to things like new home sales or new home starts, because building houses stimulates the entire economy, right? You're not only paying the workmen who build the house, you're not only paying the people who provide the raw materials that go into the house, but you're going to be stocking that house with all the durable goods in the kitchen and the bathrooms and so on, and carpeting and the million other things that go into a brand new house to make it a home. It's highly stimulative for the whole economy. So if let's face it, we're going into a real economic crisis because of the COVID shutdown. And it is going to take months or longer for the economy to bounce back. It was roaring along in early February. It will take a while to roar again. It just will. But when economists are watching it come back, that will be a major day when they start talking about new home construction picking up, because there won't be a lot for a while, is my guess. Not a lot. People who need to buy a new house are probably going to be buying houses that were already built before the shutdown for quite some months. That's a strong suspicion on my part. Okay, change in inventories. Inventory is what businesses have in their warehouses. Now, you might think they would count those things only when they sell, but no. At the end of the year, they want to know what's in the warehouses. And that will tell them how much goes out over the course of the year. So looking at change in inventories is going to be essentially zero there. If there had been a large drop in inventories from year 1 to year 2, you would add that change to the GDP. But here it says 0.0. There's a reason for that. In many countries, you might still find a lot in warehouses, but not in America. Our American system has become geared to what's known as just-in-time manufacturing. We don't want a lot of things sitting around in warehouses because they're dead to the business. They don't do the business any good to be storing its products. They want, if say you make car windshields in your factory, you don't want a warehouse full of car windshields. You want them rolling off your assembly line for windshields onto a truck and down to the Ford plant, the GM plant, where they're put in vehicles without storing them. That's just-in-time manufacturing. So the net change in inventories in the United States today is minimal. All right. So there you can see the pie chart on the next page. But I want you to take a look at page 451. This is what I was talking about before. Just as our economy has increasingly become a consumer-driven economy, this is even more dramatic. Look at 451, figure 19.6. It is a graph, and look at how services are climbing. If you went back to the end of World War II in 1945, this only goes back to 1960, but the 15 years before it, it would be an even steeper climb up, all right? So services has been going up and up and up. Since 1960, you can see the percentage of the economy going up. That's because we are not the manufacturing country we once were, okay? Instead, we do things for each other. We provide services to each other. Increasingly, that's how Americans are employed. Not making things, but often handling information, processing information, creating information, teaching information. We are an information-based economy now, not a manufacturing-based economy. Sometimes this is called a post-industrial economy. And you can see right there that creeping up over the last 55 years of the section of our economy that is service-oriented. Again, a recent dip reflected here, the aftermath of the Great Recession. That was more unemployment. But look at manufacturing of non-durable goods and durable goods. You'll see there's been a somewhat of a decline in durable goods, but a much greater decline in non-durable goods. Those tend to be smaller, cheaper things, right? Like t-shirts. And those more and more are made overseas. It just is very difficult for American manufacturers to pay American wages to American workers to make those inexpensive, non-durable goods. On the other hand, the percentage of pickup trucks and cars and SUVs made in the United States has been reasonably steady. Yes, it's dipped down. That's often because of Japanese, German, Korean competition, but it's not fallen catastrophically. And structures, again, down a bit, but not crazily down because we still need new buildings, right? There are more people, they will need houses, and so on. So it was a little higher back in the 60s, as you see there, just because of the baby boom, more people were buying houses. And we do have people living in, see after the Great Recession, see there, you can see it dip down. People were staying in their houses longer. And in fact, that's part of why this thing has crept down. Once upon a time, Americans expected to move just every few years because economic opportunities would lure them to move somewhere new. But for the last 20 years, there's been a heavy trend to stay put. More and more Americans are not moving, and therefore they're not buying new homes. They're staying in the ones they've got much longer than any time since the early 20th century. All right. We talked about the problem of double counting, so you're only looking at final goods and services provided or procured. We're not wanting to count intermediate goods. In the next lecture, we'll talk about gross national product and how that differs from gross domestic product, and we'll move on from there. Have a good day.